Okay, here we go. So we are going to walk through the model work week from the book. And basically, the challenge that I hear from you guys, or a lot of you guys, is just a function of time. It's not that your tactics are too hard or you don't know what you should be doing. It's just fitting them into your schedule. And like Jana said, when she had so many things to do, it overwhelmed her. And so she didn't get as much done. But when she just gave herself a reasonable amount of things to do that she could fit into her schedule, she felt better about it and actually got things done and made some progress. So we're going to talk through the way that the book thinks about time and how they recommend like setting up your model work week, and hopefully going through this exercise, which is something I talked with about last week's Monday group. They were like, yeah, let's walk through the actual exercise just to give us an idea. I understand time blocking is hard when you're an agent, but I also think it's really important when you're an agent because so many of the things that you guys need to do to build your business are important but not urgent. So things that are important but not urgent need to be scheduled, or else they're going to get pushed to the side by the urgent things. And that's urgent things that might be important, like a buyer in town or having to write an offer, or it's urgent things that are not important to you, but are someone else's emergency that you decide to help with. So you have to, every time something comes up, you have to say, is this urgent and important to me that I would push aside whatever I had scheduled, right? So this screen here is just a blank work week, and it kind of divides the time into hours. And if you have it with you and you printed it out, great, you can write it off, write on it. If you don't, I sent it to you in Excel so you can, type into it, or you can just get a paper calendar, write notes, whatever you want. Just you can kind of think through this exercise, but I encourage you to kind of have it on hand if you can. So we're going to walk through the kind of model work week exercise and how they say to do it. And we're going to talk about different ways of thinking about your time before we kind of go through and lay it out. So one concept that this book teaches is you have to think about your time in different ways and then schedule it in different ways. So they want you to schedule one strategic block that's like 3 hours long, where you can knock some of this tactics out. And a strategic block is basically work that it's thinking work. It's work that you have to really think about and not be distracted and execute. So it's time for you to, reconnect with your vision of where you're headed, review how your 12 weeks are going, assess your performance, actually execute your tactics, right? Read a book, take a class, plan your next 12-week year. And that's usually when we're wrapping one up. So this is the actual time that you need to stop and think about what you're doing versus just, we had a conversation yesterday about playing whack-a-mole, and someone was like, what's whack-a-mole? And I'm like, it's that game at Chuck E. Cheese where you like whack the moles as they come up, which is a lot of what being a realtor can feel like. Just something comes up, so you have to address it, and you're just doing that all day versus being like more strategic with your time. So when we've talked about time blocking in the past, before I had read this book, we called these immersive tasks. And these are tasks that you need a longer chunk of time to sit down and do. And they're really like thinking tasks that you yourself need to do. You can't delegate out. So this is your strategic block. The book says you need 1 3-hour strategic block. I know that's really hard for you guys in your schedule. So what we talked about yesterday was schedule like maybe a couple, if that works for you. Schedule one that's an hour and one that's an hour and a half, or whatever you need. Like I, for example, need to finish the PowerPoint for this insurance CE class that I've created. And I know that that's going to take me at least an hour and a half. And I've sat down and kind of started it a few times. And finally, I'm like, I have to stop doing that and give myself an uninterrupted hour and a half. And there's no deadline on it other than this 12-week deadline, because that's one of my goals, right? So I need to schedule it and make it happen. And I haven't had time in my work time to do that yet, but I will. So that's a strategic block. Does anyone have questions about that?
I do. Is it like 3 hours a day or an hour and a half, or over the week?
So the book says you should have 1 3-hour strategic block for the week. Again, okay. And I think that this book is kind of written for someone who's sitting at a desk, like in sales, whereas you guys are more kind of have to be out and about. So I think you'll end up breaking them up into a few like, strategic blocks of time when you're actually thinking and working on your tactics. Or working on whatever your project of the moment is. That's a good question. So the book says 1 3-hour block. I think that's hard. I think the reason that they want you to do a 3-hour one is because they want you to be uninterrupted and undistracted. The book is very clear that, you know, if you, it says that the average amount, they did a study, the average amount of time it took a worker at Microsoft to get back on task was 15 minutes. So if they're working on something and they got distracted, the average amount of time for one small distraction was 15 minutes. So another study showed that 28% of an average professional's time in a day was spent on interruptions and recovery, which over the course of a 40-hour work week turned into 11 distracted hours. So 11 out of 40 hours were just distracted, which is obviously not very efficient. So they're saying if you can schedule this block and then not have any distractions, you're going to be so much more efficient and effective, which I think is true, just hard to do. That's why I think a 3-hour block for us might be a little bit challenging. Does that answer your question?
Yes, completely.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Good. Okay, so then the next way to think about your time is in buffer blocks. And this is basically your process tasks, your administrative tasks, the things that you have to do that don't require a ton of really strategic thinking. They're just things you have to kind of execute and do. And in the past, we've kind of referred to those as your process tasks. And it's like, you know, reviewing and responding to emails, listening to voicemails and responding, making necessary outbound calls, following up on your little to-do list items, taking a quick meeting, getting your assistant set up with something, your rechat, file work, you know, and organizing your filing, your working process, and then like writing your notes. So these are just things that you are kind of mundane stuff, but stuff that you have to do to like move your business forward. And they recommend scheduling 2 of these per day, one at the beginning of the day and one at the end of the day. So the example in the book says, schedule this from, you know, 11 to 12 in the morning and 4 to 5 in the afternoon. And basically that's just, if you have those built into your schedule, when something comes up and you're doing something else, you're not going to sweat it because you know you have time built into your day to address those later. And I love this idea. I think it's really important to like get that little mundane stuff out of the way and then move on. And I don't know how many of you have heard Melanie tell her story about the 12 o'clocker, but it's a good one. And I've told this story many times. So you've probably heard it, but bear with me. Basically, when Melanie was like a new agent, she was going on office tour and she was at a listing of like a super top producer, and it was in the morning, they were touring, and the producer's phone rang while she was talking to her, and the producer looked at her phone and was like, oh, that's a 12 o'clocker, and like set her phone down and didn't answer it. And Melanie was like, what's a 12 o'clocker? Like, why wouldn't you answer your phone? And this top producer basically said, this person is calling me because they have a problem and I know what their problem is. And I could probably resolve it, but the person that they really need to talk to is not me. So I'm going to not answer the call and they'll probably get it resolved. I'm going to call them back at noon. And so I'm still giving them good customer service and being available to them, but I'm not interrupting what I'm doing to answer their question that probably is going to get resolved anyway. So she's like, so she obviously had a buffer block at 12 to like return these phone calls. And as an agent, you guys know this, they're going to call you first no matter what, which is great. And you'll usually know the answer, which is also great. But they probably also have a lender or a title company that could answer that question. It usually probably is related to one of those things. And so it's okay to not immediately answer everything all the time if you're in the middle of something else. So that's what I'm telling you. That doesn't mean you're never going to get back to them. That doesn't mean they're going to be like, she's a terrible communicator. But if someone calls you at 10:30 and you're in the middle of something, it's okay to wait, even read what their message was about, right, on your phone, and then call them back at noon. Or sometimes with the beauty of our phone now, you can read what they were asking. You could probably text them an answer. So it just gives you the opportunity to protect your time a little bit. And you know that these buffer blocks are scheduled to do those kind of administrative things that you have to do. Are there any questions about this?
Hey, Zareen, if I disappear, I have a 2:45 I have to be at. So
Okay.
Don't think I'm being rude. I do.
No worries. Well,
I
we're
have to go up the
recording.
street.
Thank you. We're recording, so we will send out the recording afterwards to
Okay.
everyone, because I know I couldn't be here tomorrow, and I have a hard stop at 2:40 also, so we
Okay.
won't be there for too
Great.
much longer.
Thank you.
But does anyone have questions between strategic block and buffer block? No. Okay. So we're going through these because we're going to put these into our calendar. Okay. So then the last way that they recommend that you think about your time is a breakout block. And these are 3-hour blocks where you're free to enjoy yourself and embrace your creativity. And basically you're giving yourself some time to like relax and chill out, right? And they say you must have at least one of these every week to avoid burnout. So one thing that they say is that when you're doing we're all doing this for the first time and it's like a little awkward and we're not quite sure. And we'll probably be able to look backward and be like, oh, I'll be able to write my tactics so much better next time, or I'll be able to better state my goal or whatever it is. But so they don't say you don't necessarily need this the first time you're doing the 12-week year, but if you get into the habit of setting yourself a 12-week goal every quarter, you're going to want to get to the point where you're getting really good at efficiently organizing your time, but you're making sure to schedule some time off. And that's what this is, right? Just give yourself a creative outlet for a few hours every week in one big chunk. Any questions there? No. Okay, so we're going to go back to this calendar now, and we're going to go through the actual exercise of laying out our time. So the point of this is not to like eliminate activities, but it's instead to help you carve out the time to do your high value activities, right? And schedule them, your important but not urgent tasks. So let's get started. And the first thing that I recommend that you do when you're looking at your blank model week is put in your like non-negotiables. Like I said, I was talking to that agent who knows that she's really only free with quiet thinking time between 9 and 2:45 Monday through Friday. So she would probably put, between 8 and 9, like drop off kids Monday through Friday, right? And then from 3 to 4, drop off kids, right? And then she knows like what is her window. So I would put first your like non-negotiables that are kind of like just restrictions on your calendar that you have to work around, and figure out what those are. So that's the first step, because then we're basically giving ourselves kind of a framework to figure out what would my model week look like. So we're good there. I can't see you guys, so this is hard.
Yes, we're good.
Okay. So then the next thing you're going to do is block out, this says, 15 minutes, the first thing Monday morning, to review your prior week and plan for this week. That does not have to be 15 minutes Monday morning. Like I need a little bit more time. So I usually do in the time leading up to when the Monday morning meeting starts, I'm kind of getting organized, looking at my to-do list, like figuring out what are my tactics for the week. And then also figuring out what is my score for the prior week. So I do that. That's the other thing I would put into this calendar. I would put, 9:15 to 10:15, like Monday morning meeting. And if you're in the Agent Basics class, I would put 9 to 10 on Friday, Agent Basics, because those are things you need to kind of plan around. And then figure out when's a good time. Some people might want to do this like Sunday. I had an agent yesterday say he likes to do this while he watches football. He likes to do it Sunday afternoon. I used to be, when I was working, like a mega crazy person. Sunday was my day to plan and assess and kind of prepare so that I could like hit the ground running on Monday. So you guys have to figure out when's best for you. If you want to do it Fridays because you're about to go into a busy week as an agent, busy weekend as an agent, like that's fine. Just figure out when's the right time for you to check in with yourself, like once a week, right? And kind of get into that habit. So we put that into our calendar. Did anyone want to volunteer when they put that into the calendar for themselves if it's not Monday morning? No? Okay. So then your next thing you're going to schedule, since you have into your schedule, your kind of quick little weekly planning block, as well as your kind of non-negotiables and commitments that you have to meet, schedule your strategic blocks and figure out when would be the best time for you to do those. And I'm going to show you guys this.
When do you think is the best time for strategic blocks? Tuesday, really, I think it should be almost a couple hours for me right now, in the morning every week but it's just, that's part of where I get tripped up is I'm kind of trying to also go to all these classes. So it's just, I get thrown off, but yeah.
Yeah. So, so that, Jennifer, for you, part of your Monday morning planning exercise may be to open up your calendar and look at the training calendar and the classes that you really want to go to, pencil in.
And then figure out the time. That makes sense.
Yeah. And then go from there.
Yeah.
And then you may know, this is an example one where, I did, the weekly prep and score in the morning and then go to office meeting, go to tour, have lunch, then do my strategic block. And then, you picked up your kids or you meet them after school or whatever, and then go back to a buffer block. And then plan for tomorrow. So this is one example, but you can see the buffer
Yeah.
block is in the morning and the buffer block is at the end of the day. And then in this example, like everyone has to have a day off or a day when they're going to like schedule doctor's appointments or whatever. And I just said, so on Wednesdays, you're going to try not to schedule anything. So you kind of block that one out. And in this example, like yellow is personal stuff and then blue is work stuff.
And are you doing this like say in Excel? Is that right? Or where?
Yeah. So this example is in Excel. Everyone has to pick like what's their best calendar. I use Outlook personally, and I'll show you guys my Outlook calendar in a second. But because the beauty of Outlook is if you do have something important but non-urgent scheduled and something important and urgent comes up, you can move it, right? You can push it back, but it doesn't just get crossed off and forgotten. So I like that. And I also like Outlook because it syncs to my phone and I have like family shared calendars in my phone. And so my phone for me is my like single source of truth where I can see, I have 2 different work calendars and then I have a calendar with my husband and then we have a calendar for the kids that we share with their mom and stepdad. So there's like a million calendars happening. And in my phone, all of those calendars lay over each other, which is the best place for me to look to see if I'm truly available or not. But my work calendar just has my work stuff in it because it would be like crazy looking if it had all of my personal stuff in it too. But sometimes I put personal stuff into my work calendar if I don't want to forget it. But I have to remind myself when I'm trying to schedule something, I don't just need to look at my work calendar. I need to look at my phone to make sure that there's not something else happening personal in the day that I didn't account for.
Well, and I like that you have that one day that's for like doctor's appointments. Cause I feel like with all these kids and stuff, like one's got one this day, one's got one this day, then I have one. And then it's like your work week's over and you didn't get to work.
Exactly. Like I picked this person here on this day and this person here on, it's true. And
So
I mean,
like everybody's on a 1-day schedule.
yeah. And I mean, is that always going to work? No, but at least it's something to shoot for. And I think also it gives you guys the permission to like have a day where you don't have to do something for work. And I use this example often, but it's okay to have a boundary. If you are scheduling an inspection for a buyer and the inspector says, well, I can do it Wednesday afternoon or Thursday morning, it's okay for you to tell your buyer, the inspector has 2 options. They can do Wednesday afternoon or Thursday morning. If you want me to be there with you, I will be available on Thursday morning. On Wednesday afternoon, I wouldn't be able to be there with you, but I'd still be able to review the inspection and talk through it with you and negotiate the repairs. And then you're still being super professional. They don't know that it's because you're going to yoga on Wednesday afternoon, right?
Yeah.
So, unless you post about it in social media, so you got to be careful. But, it's okay to do it that way and to like have some boundaries with your time. Otherwise, this business will like run you over. Right?
Like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, is it realistically that every Wednesday all day you're going to do nothing for work and have the day off? Probably not, but it's nice to kind of think of your week that way if you want. And I just picked Wednesday. It doesn't have to be Wednesday. It can be anything. We used to have a super mega top performing agent who was like, I don't work on Sundays. And he told his sellers, like, I don't do open houses on Sundays. And that's just how it was. There's plenty of people, if they want an open house on Sunday, that would hold it open for him. But he was like, I don't work Sundays. It's my day of rest. And that worked for him, did not slow him down. So it's all about managing expectations for people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, this is basically, so you scheduled your strategic block or your strategic blocks, and then you schedule your buffer blocks into your calendar. And, I would have a hard time waiting until 11 a.m. to like answer emails. So I'm going to do all of that between 8 and 9:15. And then if I have other calls to make, I'll do them in the car when I'm like driving around. But you just put the things that are important on your calendar, including these buffer blocks, right? At the beginning of the day and the end of the day. And then you also schedule your breakout block, whatever that looks like for you. This calendar has exercise in it every hour. This calendar is like I'm going to go to the baseball game or the soccer game or whatever, something fun for sure. And then you schedule all your other appointment activities. You add them in, right? Client and process, like if you, like this one has sphere lunch. It's like, I know I do better when I'm going to networking lunches twice a week. So I'm going to try to do those on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I'm just going to put them in the calendar and then try to fill them up, right? Standing meetings that you have. We had Angela Thornhill on our call yesterday, and she has a manager's meeting every Thursday, right? So she would have to block out Thursday for a manager's meeting. So just standing meetings that that you have, like put them in there. And then all your other schedule everything, right? Like your marketing calls, your sales calls, when you have if you have a listing agreement, a listing presentation on Thursday afternoon, you need to schedule some time Tuesday or Wednesday to prepare for that listing presentation, right? And gather everything that you have, so you're not doing it 20 minutes before you're supposed to walk out the door like a chicken with your head cut off. So schedule these things and just set yourself up for success. And then even this says, schedule your referral lunches, schedule work time on your projects, schedule any coaching sessions you have, just kind of slowly put these things in there once you've built the shell with your, your non-negotiables that you have to do, and your buffer blocks and your strategic blocks, kind of just in your standing meetings, like plan around it. So it's just really building a schedule for yourself. And then you can see here, like, there's an open house scheduled on Sunday afternoon, and then there's time scheduled as follow-up, right? And in theory, there would be some open house prep here, maybe on Friday, where you're pulling comps and putting together nice little buyer packages for people that legitimately seem interested in walk through. You're scheduling your time so that everything's laid out pretty clearly. Does that make sense? Who has questions about this? Who feels overwhelmed? Like, how are we doing?
I think this is great. This is helping me a ton.
Good. This is one, I'm trying to find, I had a more specific one that had some other things in it, but here. So I'm going to share this one with you guys. And we have only a couple more minutes. So let's hope that I pick the right one. So this is one, and this is, it says process tasks and immersive tasks, but you can swap that at process tasks would become buffer block, and immersive task would become strategic block. But you can see, I have buyer showings on Saturday. So on Thursday, I've scheduled some time to prepare for my buyer, and I have a listing presentation on Thursday. So on Monday, I'm preparing for my listing presentation. So I blocked out this time, and I just know I'm going to have time to prepare for the activities that I have. Does that make sense? It's just putting these things in your calendar so that you don't get, they don't sneak up on you. And then, every Friday morning I do my seller weekly communications, like Thomas Wright says that I should. So that's in here. Friday mornings are blocked out for that. And then, my listing, I went to the listing presentation the day before. So I have my listing ABCs and follow-up email that I'm supposed to do, right? So you just kind of make a plan. Is that helpful to see? Now this is like super hard and super advanced. And like I said, it's called the model work week. So nobody's work week looks like that. So don't stress out or feel overwhelmed. It's just to give you kind of like an idea. I can see if I can find my Outlook. This week is kind of crazy because I'm going on vacation, but last week, this is what it looked like. And I have two different work calendars because one's one color, my coaching business and my Briggs Freeman business. And then these are invites from other people, right? And you just kind of, it just fills up, and you just put things into the calendar. Like we had breakfast before Agent Basics. And so I scheduled that, and then I had to go pick it up in my calendar because I forget everything. But basically that's kind of what this looks like. Questions? Like things that are really important. Like I had to pick up my bridesmaid's dress. So I put that into my work calendar so I for sure wouldn't forget it. But just so that you guys can kind of see what it looks like.
So Zareen,
Yeah.
do you do anything paper? Like any, cause I ended up I was trying to do everything like on my laptop and my phone, and I still just have to have my book.
I don't do anything calendar wise paper.
You don't?
No, because it changes too much and I'm sharing it with too many people. But I do know a lot of people that use the Ninja Planner
Yeah,
and use a paper calendar to help them sit down and like plan their week. Like when I'm planning my to-dos and my tasks, I put that on paper. Or I really, honestly, what I do is I make notes. So
yeah,
I
I
use
get it.
I'm just I'm a disaster. Like my bag is my office. So I have like pieces of paper always. So I try really hard to just keep like running to-do lists.
Yeah, I do that too.
And then I make a daily one that I write out when I'm like planning for my day. So and there's no right or wrong. It's really just you guys figuring out what works for you. And like maybe 97% of this was garbage, but if there was like one tip that was 3% that was useful and will help you, then it's like worthwhile.
No,
Right.
this is great. It helps a ton.
Okay, well, I hope it helps. Does anyone have any questions before we skedoodle? No? Well, thanks for coming. If you have questions or want to follow up or want to go over any of this, happy to do it. Just say the word, we can set up a time.
Thank you
Thank
so much
you.
Doreen, for
Thank
taking
you.
the
Bye, guys.
time.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.